Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's Training Industry Leader Talk on L&D strategy. Today's event is brought to us by Biz Library, InfoPro Learning, Lone Rock Leadership, SweetRush, and We Learn. I'm Elizabeth, the Director of Marketing here at Training Industry, and I'm happy to be with you all today. Our next session is with Biz Library on aligning L&D initiatives with 2026 business goals. If you are just joining us, just a few reminders on housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of your time. Throughout the session, please feel free to use your chat window for any comments or questions you might have for our speaker. We will do our best to address any of your questions throughout the session today. Once this session ends, a brief survey will appear in your browser, and we'd welcome your feedback about the session, event, speaker, topics for the future. We'd love any and all of your thoughts. All of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com, and you'll receive a follow-up email from us later on today or tomorrow with a link to those on-demand sessions that you can watch again later, share with a team member who might have missed any of the sessions. If this is your first event with us, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals like you. We offer lots of resources to support your role in L&D through events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website and our magazine, in-person conferences, courses tailored for L&D, our podcast, research reports, and I could go on. We would love to hear what you've learned from today's session on social media. So please feel free to follow us on your favorite platforms and let's continue the conversation there. Now, without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Paul Eschen. As Chief Marketing Officer at Biz Library, Paul helps learning and development professionals demonstrate ROI and secure a seat at the executive table. Passionate about behavioral science, he leverages data-driven insights to shape the future of learning and employee engagement. Paul, it's great to have you with us today, so I'm going to pass it off to you this time.
Perfect. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. And see a few folks out there who need to find an energy source. Feel free to pop away and grab a soda or a coffee or whatever might help you through. But I'll promise to do my best to provide an energy source as well for you today with a topic I'm super, super excited for. So, thank you, first off, for joining me. It's not lost on me. We're at the start of the year. Everyone is crazy busy. You're figuring out exactly what you need to focus on this year and building a plan around it. So, thank you for taking the time out of your day to dedicate to some of my thought leadership. And we are going to dive right into it because we have a lot to cover today. And frankly, I'm super, super excited for this specific session. We're launching a report in a few weeks, and I'm sharing some of the early insights from it. But additionally, as Elizabeth mentioned, Paul Eschen, Chief Marketing Officer at Biz Library, been here 5 years now. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll see some of my thought leadership there, as well as some upcoming things that are coming out. But do that real quick if you haven't already, and I'd absolutely love to connect with you and keep the conversation going. So, love to see the dialogue in the chat. Have your phones and your computers ready. We will be doing some live polling that should be really interesting to see some of those results. So without further ado, let's get started. Quick note, if you're on LinkedIn and you're connecting with me, we are doing a really fun little contest the next 2 days. If you connect with Biz Library on LinkedIn, we just launched an HR Team of One kind of spoof video. If you're familiar with the old Bud Light Real Men of Genius commercials, we basically have created a Real Legends of Learning series, and the honor this week goes to Miss HR Team of One. Too many things, too many hats. So watch that video, and then if you simply in the comments section tag a coworker, tag a friend or a family member of yours that you know is in HR and L&D and wears many hats, Both yourself and the person that you tag will be entered into a drawing by end of day tomorrow for one of three $100 gift cards. So, would love your feedback. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments too once you watch it. But just a fun thing that we've been doing the last few months in the Library marketing team. So without further ado, what are we going to learn about today? And thank you. Lauren just dropped in a link to the post itself. So that makes it super simple for you. Feel free to click there. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that. So what are we going to cover and what are you going to walk away from in the next 40 minutes? First off, strategic trends impacting learning in 2026 and beyond. Absolutely vital. Blueprint for building a successful learning program. I'm excited to share shortly a framework with you that will help guide how do you think through your priorities and what you're gonna focus on this year. Way to prioritize learning initiatives based on key success metrics. That's going to be in the framework we'll share. And then if we have time, I'm really going to get into my role in the C-suite and questions from my experience that you absolutely can ask your C-suite. They're going to help drive business priority and ensure that you have a seat at the table. Buckle up, everyone. I talk fast. We're going to cover a lot of stuff here, but I'm hopeful that you'll find all of it valuable. I absolutely love doing this session every year with Leader Talks. Okay, let's get started. A quick intro into Biz Library. Won't spend long on this. What does Biz Library do? We help companies build inclusive cultures. We help them upskill and reskill their people. We help them develop their leaders. We do this with on-demand video lessons. We have expert-led content in these short video lessons. We also feature an award-winning LMS. That's really the secret sauce, I'd say, with Biz Library is the way that our content integrates with our LMS and the experience that you get when you put those two together. On top of that, we do have a built-in upskilling platform called BizSkills and a lot of features I'll speak to on one slide later today around AI-driven content creation, content translation, and then something we actually just launched yesterday called BizReady, which is AI-powered role plays. So that's super exciting as well. We really like to think of ourselves as the all-in-one solution for where learning happens, wherever that may be in your organization. I alluded to this earlier. So, a lot of today's thinking is based on a report we're launching in 2 weeks. Connect with me on LinkedIn for a copy because I'll be launching it there on February 1st. But it's all around this concept of the performance paradox. So, it's a thought leadership piece on the future of learning at work. It's basically learning and workforce trends report. And it is shared by a handful of thought leaders in the space of leadership development, of AI, of learning ecosystem and technology. And the performance paradox is essentially this idea that AI is absolutely helping organizations move faster than ever. But what we're seeing is that performance is not improving at the same pace. And I don't know if, give me a thumbs up or give me a yes if you're seeing that same challenge in your organization. Um, Execution is absolutely accelerating. But we have gaps in clarity, we have gaps in judgment, and we have alignment as less visible than ever before. So that is really the challenge. That's the performance paradox, and we're going to cover today a lot of why is that happening and what can we do as learning and HR professionals to kind of fix it. And thank you for the engagement and the thumbs up. That's awesome. So basically, here's the paradox: speed is increasing, outcomes are not increasing, and learning has to evolve as a result of that. So that's pretty awesome as well. That's what we're going to cover. So let's dig in. What are the forward-looking trends that we've seen in the performance paradox that are going to drive today's conversation? Kick off with training activity to performance impact. So, for years, learning success was measured by activity, right? Courses completed, hours logged, certifications earned. As AI accelerates execution, activity alone is no longer signaling performance. It really hasn't for some time now. So, what we're seeing is that leaders are asking a different question entirely. What actually changed as a result? So even though learning is increasingly expected to improve decision quality, speed, alignment, and retention, that's kind of what we're seeing, not just participation, right? So how do you do that in a learning and development role? Two, we firmly believe in a lot of kind of thinking out there and a lot of the report insights that we got is that practice and practicing what you learned, not content, is really going to be the growth engine and ultimately kind of the thing that unlocks performance in the future. So this idea that access to content is no longer the problem, right? We know that content's everywhere. That's actually the biggest problem. But application is really the solution here. So as work becomes faster, more complex, employees don't improve just by consuming more information, right? They improve by practicing skills in real situations with feedback. So we'll touch on that as well. Trend number three, human judgment and AI fluency. right? The combination of those two will define future ready talent. So while AI is changing how work gets done, it does not remove the need for human judgment. It just doesn't. What it actually does is intensifies it. And we'll get to some interesting insights there. And frankly, the way we should think about it is as AI takes on more execution, humans are increasingly responsible for deciding what matters, for interpreting outputs, and navigating really ethical and contextual trade-offs of those decisions. So learning has to intentionally develop judgment alongside AI fluency, or performance is going to break down. So we'll touch on what that means, which is really, really interesting. I've read a lot about how the death of the middle manager is going to become less and less relevant with the onset of AI. I just fundamentally think that's incorrect, and I think managers are going to become the new learning infrastructure. What do we mean by that? Managers are going to, and they do today, and will continue to even more and more, sit at the center of the performance paradox. They're expected to absorb rapid change, manage people and AI. I just saw that Deloitte and some other consulting companies are giving AI chatbots employee badges. They're giving them actual profiles in the organization. That's part of the future, right? So that's okay. We need to accept that. But they're managing people and AI and creating clarity in environments where priorities shift constantly. You'll see today that is the change. Priorities are shifting constantly. Managers are more important than ever to manage that those shifting priorities. I would argue that managers actually have more influence on performance and learning than any platform and than ever before. And they are really ultimately equipped to set expectations and reinforce priorities, more than ever. So that's really the focus. So I touched on this. Trend five, clarity becomes the leadership imperative. Clarity does. And this was, if you know who Adam Weber is, who's a big HR, management leader, he's a leadership coach. A big part of his thinking in the performance paradox is very much focused on clarity, and I'm happy to kind of give him a shout out because I think it's fascinating work. But basically, as managers take on more responsibility for execution, leadership teams take on a new responsibility for clarity, right? AI is making things faster, but there are not often right now clear expectations around what that means and what to automate. So we'll touch on that. Okay, first poll, and I'm like I said, I'm going to fly through because I've got a lot to share, and then we'll share out the decks. I think you'll like a lot of this content as well. Pull out menti.com on your phone or on your web browser. MENTI couldn't be simpler. Also, I highly recommend this if you are in charge of kind of running focus groups or any kind of engagement exercise. It's a really cool tool. It's super simple to use. 1488-674. I'll go in there with you. You should get, how are you prioritizing learning investments this year? I just want to hear, are you focused on compliance or risk mitigation? I think you can put in as many as you want. So if you're doing all of these, great. I think you can self-select all of them. If not, just do the most important. Compliance and risk, business growth and customer retention, training and learning, leadership development, career pathing, engagement, upskilling, and employee development. I'll call it 30 seconds to answer. Ooh, thank you for the thumbs up. Always love to see that. Oh, pull that back up. Sorry. Love Menti. Thank you, Heidi. It is really a great tool. Super simple to use, as you guys can see. Awesome. First off, thank you for over 50 responses. That's awesome to see. Glad we've got an engaged group. Second, this is really interesting. We see a lot of, I think it speaks to this audience. Absolutely love seeing that far right side, right? Focused on upskilling and employee development. And what we will touch on a lot of today is the challenges with focusing on employee development and connecting that directly to business priorities, which is likely why you were here. So this is really great to see. And great to kind of see the distribution across the group. So with that, let's get back in. So I want you to imagine if you've ever heard of the 100 pennies exercise, picture I hand you all 100 pennies. And imagine these pennies represent your time and energy, sorry, for 2026. So I did this last year. I've updated a lot, but this is one slide from last year. How would you divide those pennies up? And I think this is fascinating, right? And I like that it's pennies because you could say 37 pennies to compliance, 57 pennies to employee development and upskilling. But picture that because you only have 100 pennies of energy, and it's just like your energy for a day or energy for a year. And I think this will help you think through your priorities. And one of the challenges, and I heard this from a leader called Kevin Eikenberry, who talks about this concept. I had no idea. The word priority came into the English language in the 1400s, and it was singular. There was no word priorities, which is this is like the most humanity thing I've ever heard in like business world that surprises me zero. Because it meant the very first or prior thing, right? That was what a priority was. There couldn't be multiple. It stayed singular for the next 500 years, only in the 1900s. Awesome comment, Karen. Glad you like Kevin. Hey, if you're a Biz Library client or not, we actually have all of his content in our library, and it's some of the most popular stuff that we have, for what it's worth. So, only in the 1900s did we pluralize this term and start talking about priorities. I find that fascinating. And why I bring that up is when I talked about and asked the question, what are your priorities? If you checked all those boxes, that's probably a problem. If you had more than two as a priority, that might be a problem as well, right? What is your priority? And distilling that down into the 100 pennies to understand, we only have so much time and energy to give anything. How are we going to do it well? I'll tell you, I've managed a lot of people, and if you've ever been in that world where you try to have someone have like a hybrid role where they're kind of going to be a sales rep and they're kind of going to be like a CSM, or they're kind of going to do this role in HR, kind of going to do learning, it really never goes that well because they give half energy to both and they can't do both really well. That's what I think of when I see this idea of priorities. So Lauren is going to drop this worksheet into the chat. It is an editable PDF. I'm sure many of you have already started your planning for the year. You may even have all of your, strategic pillars built out and the entire plan. If you don't, or if you do, this is just a tool that we recommend that you can kind of fill out on this call today that allows you to think through the spectrum I'm about to show you and think through your priorities. I gave you three. I feel like that's more than generous based on everything we just shared. But what percent of your time will you focus on each of those learning priorities this year? How will you measure business outcomes of those priorities? What is the timeline for rollout this year? And what will you measure success against for each of these? So, briefly, let's talk through each of these. And I personally love this framework because I think it makes it simple. You could argue, and I always on this get people kind of asking questions like, where's hiring and recruiting? That's a great question. There's some things in this that don't directly tie to roles that HR have, but it is definitely much more focused on learning programs that you might run in your organization. So what I love to see is just the level of what I'll call employee impact, which is the far right side that many of you are kind of operating this year in terms of the programs you're running. But how I like to think about this is on the far left, you've got what I'll call business impact. And the reason we say business impact is the majority of our clients, when they're focused on compliance and risk mitigation, it's the easiest one to tie ROI to, right? Well, do we have lawsuits? Are those going down? Yes. Okay, great. We're saving money. We absolutely need to do compliance. The majority of our clients, if not every single one of them, is running a compliance program first and foremost. Then they expand to leadership and upskilling and some of the things that you guys highlighted on the previous slide. That's where we talk about cybersecurity, onboarding, workplace safety, harassment. As you move then over and think about this as a spectrum where these are all objectives that a learning program could seek to solve on a sliding scale of business impact to employee impact, right? Business growth and customer retention. So, this really comes down to sales and customer service training. How are we making sure that in a credit union, our frontline staff are properly talking to customers? Our sales team is equipped to understand how to sell. Digital literacy is what I put here. So very much so understanding the new rules of engagement and understanding how to leverage tools that are going to help grow your business. New product launches, things like that. A lot of this is ad hoc training that you do internally, right? But it has very much impact on the business results, new product growth, easy to track. Did the product sell or did it not, right? Leadership development, then, as you kind of head towards the middle, this is where we start to get into after you've thought about kind of shoring up program growth, business safety, right? Business safety, business growth. How do we develop our leaders? Many of our customers start with new manager training. Kevin Eikenberry actually has a whole thing around Bud to Boss. That's his whole course. How do you, when you get a first time manager, train them to not be the friend anymore, right? This is where we get into a lot of things we're seeing hybrid leadership training, communication skills. Empathetic leadership is like one of the most common training topics that we're seeing trained on these days. But how are you building a program on leadership development? And as you'll see, leaders are the most highly leveraged um, role in an organization. We'll touch on that later, but that's why it starts to be both business impact and employee impact and why they're so essential, right? Then you get into career pathing and employee retention. So this is really kind of the future leaders of the organization. Many organizations start with leaders, then they go, okay, who's kind of the future, right? High potential programs. This is where you get into job specific training. This is where you get into what Biz Library calls Biz Skills, our personalized upskilling platform. How do I actually upskill and reskill those in the roles in the broader organization, right? And so then you move on to engagement and culture. And again, I share this framework because this is traditionally how many learning and development functions operate. What I share here usually with Objective 5 is if you have a training program that highlights and emphasizes work-life balance, building an inclusive culture, and you've successfully connected Objective 5 to connect Objective 1, it's built into your onboarding, it's built into who you are culturally as an organization. You give people time off, you give them time to learn, and that's who you are. Bravo. Stay working for that company. You're also doing something right in your role, so give yourself a pat on the back. But in many organizations, we see that these are like not afterthoughts as much as not priority compared to some of the things on the left. And then objective 6, so building a culture of continuous learning. We hear this a lot. It's elective learning, it's learning for learning's sake, it's providing access to an LMS and to content for personal growth. I loved seeing that many of you are doing this on that previous slide. And great call out. The future generations, Gen Z, like this is an inherent expectation as being an employee in your organization. So hopefully you're seeing that many employees are clamoring for this as something they just expect, which is absolutely awesome, right? There's more power in the control of the employees. Um, but I also call this out because often this is the hardest one to measure and the hardest one to get funding for, and also the hardest one to justify when you are, fighting for budget or fighting to retain budget. So we'll talk about what that means. So let's connect to that now. So, many of you talked about leadership training and talked about upskilling, reskilling. I'm fascinated by hearing your answers to this. So pull up Menti. How is learning success most often measured in your organization today? How do you measure ROI? Sorry, and sorry, if you pull up Menti, it should have just refreshed. I had to do it. Dana, great insight. That's a really good call. That's you're spot on. All right, 40 out of 60. 60 people are logged in. That's good to see. All right, we're catching up. Thank you for my singular thumbs up again. Let's see if it continues throughout the polls. Appreciate you guys. Okay, really, really interesting. So I'm fascinated by these results. What I really expected, which I think you kind of see is a distribution left that kind of went to the left, which you see, but really cool to see some level of manager feedback, observation, business or performance outcomes. My hope is that framework to those of you that are really starting to see this is helpful. For those of you on the left, hopefully it's helpful for you on the right. I'd be interested to see how you're directly connecting learning objectives to business and performance outcomes. That's really, really cool to see. But thank you guys for indulging me there. So let's talk through trend number one, training not necessarily equaling performance and really what the future looks like there. So only 12 to 15% of employees say that training actually improves how they actually perform on the job. Even though there is continuing to be a record investment in learning, which really just highlights that training for training's sake is not enough. And or you're probably going to get great responses on a survey, but that doesn't actually necessarily mean that retention occurred, right? Or that they're going to be able to put that into practice. Speed without alignment increases burnout and rework. We know this, right? Learning ultimately must reinforce decision making and not just knowledge. That's really the crux of this, right? Performance won't just occur by training itself. What's important too is executives really care, and going back to the poll, about performance narratives, not perfect attribution. If you're able to connect the dots on how learning led to X performance or X improvement, that's really all an executive is looking for. So what the shift is that outcomes are greater than completions are greater than the sheer amount of content that you consume. We had four contributors to our performance paradox. Heidi Kirby said the most important metric is whether learning does what you intended it to do. Simple enough. However you measure that, whether you use our framework or another, that's as simple as it is. David Kelly, who if you know about DevLearn or the Learning Guild, he was the head of that for 10, 15 years. Executives don't need perfect causality. They need a coherent performance story. That's really what this is. Using the data in your organization to tell a coherent performance story. I really, really like this idea of the four S's of learning. And what that looks like is what are the systems that you're using learning, whether that's your LMS or HRS, all of them have data and more data than ever to help you tell that story, right? What are what's the skills data that you have? What's the skills taxonomy you have? What skills data do you have that's helping contribute to your learning program? And then, most importantly, when I think about kind of future proofing your career, spreadsheets and storytelling, right? You have data. If you're claiming in your role you don't have access to data, you're either in the wrong org, and I've been there. We didn't have access to data, and I always use that as an excuse. So I moved on to a company that's very data centric, and it's terrifying, but it's beautiful. Or you might have the wrong partners, right? If you don't have data from your partners, that's also a problem, right, in your technology stack. Data is everywhere, and more importantly, it's about the dashboard view that you're able to be given from your partners and the way they're feeding data up to you to tell a learning story. That's really the story here. So system skills, spreadsheet storytelling. Let's hop into Menti again. Where does most of your employee learning time go today? Next question. It's kind of a 1-2 to this, right? So courses and content consumption. So really, when you think about what you're assigning or what, your learning development program looks like, what are the employees actually doing? Courses, content, practice simulations or role play, job aids in the flow sport, intentional manner-led coaching. I definitely don't think that's as high as it could be. Depends very widely. Okay. Thought about not including this one because that may mean all four or may mean none of these. Awesome. Okay, so keep filling that out. I'll share this out too. I'll be sharing these insights on my LinkedIn. We'll also share out the deck with you so you have this. And what I'll try to do, Elizabeth, hold me to this, drop these into the deck and we'll share that out after the fact so that you actually have the poll results because I think it's always fascinating to kind of benchmark. Okay, I'm not surprised at all. It's courses and content consumption. It's exactly what we've kind of been speaking to on this shift in the importance of practice. So practice is really the future as the growth engine. So we know that employees retain up to 5 times more when learning includes practice feedback versus just passive consumption, right? Content alone does not create capability. That's the big lesson here. Practice is what builds confidence under pressure, and job aids and in the flow support often outperform courses. I love this concept. Learning should reduce friction, not add cognitive tax. And Lori Niles Hoffman, who is a contributor to the report, says that learning is a tax on employees and should be used deliberately and sparingly. I love that concept so much because so often we go, if I assign more content and I think of more topics, I'm doing my job. And frankly, that's actually not the answer at all, and that's not what the future is. It's about distilling it down to real on-the-job needs and skills, and then practicing and reinforcing less things. As Heidi says, a well-placed job aid can be 10 times more useful than a 30-minute course no one asked for. So I love that. I spoke to BizReady, which we launched yesterday. If you fill out a demo on our site, we'll set you up with a quick demo. It's super, super cool. But BizLibrary, other companies, this is the future. You watch a content, you watch a course, and then you get dropped into an AI powered role play where you practice what you learned based on the skills that you learned. And then you get a full report out that you can share with your manager that says, did I learn based on what I retained in that session or from that course? Did I retain it? And am I actually learning and building on that? And you can continue to take these role plays and they change every time. Really, really interesting stuff. Okay, on to AI. Back into Menti. Got one more poll. What is the biggest challenge with AI in your organization today? Thank you for my thumbs upper. Keep it up. Biggest challenge with AI in your organization today. We've got 16 minutes. I'm excited. We're going to keep flying through. Hey, for what it's worth too, I had the flu earlier this week, so I'm like on a high of happiness. You have no idea. The only thing that is feels as bad as the flu feels is the high you get when you finally feel better from the flu. And I'm sure some of you have been there recently. I've got four kids under 8, so I have the flu like every week. But my goodness, I feel great today. So thank you for joining me. Okay, challenge of the day in your organization today. Tool adoption. Oh my gosh, I love to see just the consistency of all of these challenges, right? I think you could all say all of the above. I love seeing trust and transparency. That's a really thoughtful answer for you to be able to share. Tool adoption totally makes sense to all of them. So let's talk about this, right? Why do you see all of these? So over 60% of executives themselves, who frankly are the ones that are going, we need AI, we need AI, we need less people, we need AI to take over. The executives say AI adoption is moving faster than their workforce ability to use it effectively. That's terrifying, right? And I think that's core to the challenge you guys all just called out. Um, Literacy does not equal, knowing when to trust AI. Ethical reasoning and interpretation are now foundational skills. These are things that are new skills for us. I love this idea that human value concentrates as automation scales. That's fascinating. And you've heard a lot about it. You're becoming, in your role, a creator, a strategic thinker, a strategic owner of tools. Your value actually concentrates and gets more important. And that's what you need to, that kind of the way you need to adopt AI and think about it. Adaptive human skills are no longer complementary, they're foundational. I love that. This makes me think of you used to have soft skills and technical skills, right? Human skills. Those are now foundational skills. Those are what you add valuable. Like those are the value you add. The technical skills and some of those are not as foundational as they used to be. And now it's not really soft skills, they're foundational skills. I really like that term. AI literacy is not about making cute videos or writing prompts. It's about knowing when to trust a tool and when not to. I could not agree more with that sentiment from Heidi. I think that is core to our challenge. Sometimes AI makes us less productive because it ends up being something that we can't trust and we have to keep going back and using, and we could have just done it quicker without AI. That's kind of core to this challenge. Continuing on this was a fascinating report from PwC's annual Global CEO Survey, which is like 6 months ago. Take a look at it if you haven't seen it. Less than a third of CEOs are systematically integrating AI into workforce and skills. This is not surprising based on what you shared. Half of them are doing it into technology platforms, 40% to business process and workflows, and then it gets less and less. What I find ironic about this slide is only a fourth of them are actually building AI into their core business strategy, but over half of them actually have the platforms they're using. There's the disconnect, right? If you didn't start with it and think about how it was core to your business strategy, why are you launching all of these AI tech platforms? I think that's at the crux of the challenge here, right? But it's cool to see that the CEOs are admitting it and calling it out. CEOs, this is fascinating too, and I think it speaks to the performance paradox beautifully. CEO, this came out last year, mid last year, about 2024. CEO predictions about the impacts of generative AI in 2024 turned out to be slightly optimistic. Does this surprise any of you? So they expected it and they shared it with their board and they shared it with the organization. We're going to get a lot more efficient. We're going to all get time back in our day. We're going to be more profitable. We're going to grow revenue. Hey, guess what? Results weren't there anywhere near what they expected. And I think it's core to a lot of the challenges we've been talking about today. I like this idea that Josh Bersin says, which is skills are the metadata of people. I think that's a really fascinating, kind of core to who we are when you think about this, where talent meets technology and AI meets people impact. And where I like to say, if you're kind of starting with AI or thinking about it, think about systems and think about skills. You all have systems you use that have AI being leveraged every day more and more. First and foremost, trust your systems and talk to your providers about how they're leveraging AI and what that means for you, and then upskill your people as the other side of AI on the basics of AI. What's ChatGPT? How do I use it? Tell me about Gemini, tell me about Claude. Depending on your job, do the research and help them understand how it can help their job. But that all starts with working with your senior leadership team to understand what's the business strategy around AI. If you want to know about Biz Library, and just as an example for our clients, AI is now woven into all of these things. I mentioned Biz Ready, which is role plays. You can now create content leveraging, AI in our platform. It's been fascinating being able to use it for closed captioning. We're starting to use it for voiceover. it really is pervasive in almost every prospective company you'd work with. Okay, pull back Menti out again. What limits learning impact the most today in your organization? This is also very similar to this question, right? Is kind of like what are the barriers to progress? Where do you struggle with implementation of learning and learning being as impactful as it could today? We've got manager capacity, lack of clarity on priorities, too many tools, not enough time, measurement challenges. Where's my thumbs up, guy or gal? There they are. There's one in Menti too. That's what I always get one. Love this. Thank you guys. This is great. Clarity on priorities. It's here for that. Not enough time makes sense too. I'll say my assumption is two and four here are closely linked. If you don't have clarity on your priorities, hence the framework and that worksheet, which you should sit down and talk through it, maybe fill it out first and talk through it with senior leadership to get their buy-in. That's what I'd recommend using the worksheet for. Um, how on earth can you have enough time to get to everything if you don't have clarity on what you're supposed to prioritize? Right? There's no way. So this doesn't surprise me at all. Awesome to see manager capacity isn't on here. Too many tools, measurement challenges. That's fair too. Let's talk on. Oh nope, that's the end of surveys. So good news there. Thank you. You guys all passed the test. You successfully completed our Menti surveys. I appreciate it. Managers as learning infrastructure. We've got 10 minutes. Managers drive up to 70% of variance in engagement and performance. Um, but spans of control continue to increase. This is core to our challenge. Managers are so important to a learning infrastructure, and the variability in management quality and understanding and buy-in and all of that is what's truly driving most of your inability to both align on priorities and actually be successful. But as I mentioned, managers now manage people and AI. Clarity has become a core leadership responsibility, starting at the top. I like this idea that, Adam says managers who can consistently define expectations and priorities become a competitive advantage. Such a cool concept that simply your ability, which, is like management 101 if you think about it, to define expectations and priorities is a competitive advantage. Why it's hard is what you guys did on the previous slide and everything I've been talking about. Because with AI and this expectation of productivity increasing, it gets harder because you're struggling with what to prioritize. More output. I should be able to get more, and now I can't do it. Um, Managers are being asked to create certainty for others while feeling uncertain themselves. I love that. I thought this was fascinating. Harvard Business Review just did a Gen AI study. This was middle of last year. They found in talking to managers that Gen AI helped manager employees, is who they surveyed, save 4 hours a week of time. I can attest to that feels about right from how I use it. 80% said that the tech helped them do the job faster. 30% of them admitted to wasting most of it. They saved 4 hours a week and they didn't know what to do with it, so they wasted it. The fact that they said wasting it is the most important to me. Few managers, if you look at the bottom, said they used it to connect with others, building relationships at work, enjoy their families, pick the kids up early from school and go to a park, learn new skills, get better at my job, or learn AI so that I can do my job more productively, or improve their physical or emotional health. That's really the terrifying part. They didn't do anything with it. What that means is they couldn't measure what they did with it. This is core to the challenge. Many of us are leveraging it. Many of us are struggling to actually measure its effectiveness. I also think this is core to the challenge. Trust in the workforce. This was from a survey, that same CEO survey I shared from PwC a few years ago. Well, this one was from 3 years ago, but nothing's changed. Business executives, we're on the right track with our workforce. Business executives, by and large, 76% of them believe that they have high trust level of trust between their company's leaders and the employees. They believe that they have the right culture for business reinvention, and they believe that they can successfully attract and retain the talent that they need. You guys, there is a gap between what business executives believe about their people and how they're communicating that and what your employees actually feel. That is ultimately what I see across many organizations, across many polls. Employees don't feel the trust and the love from leadership that leadership actually may have. A lot of it is this performance paradox, right? They're hearing more leverage these tools, and they don't believe it. And because it's core, it's fundamentally at a disconnect with the fact that then we're cutting costs, right? and we're letting people go, and we're trying to figure out how to grow faster. Trend five, clarity becomes leadership imperative in AI-enabled orgs. We talked about this. Over 70% of executives say their biggest risk with AI is not technology. It is unclear expectations, decision rights, and accountability. This is a bit of what's terrifying because, again, as I mentioned on the previous slide, executives get it. Their fear isn't AI, it's about expectations around AIs and accountability. The problem is often that they're the ones that own that strategy, right? The slide I showed earlier, 25% of them are starting to even build it into their business, yet they recognize that this is the most important part. But what are they doing? Laying on more AI, more AI. So um, when roles are shifting, clarity becomes the work. The risk is not the AI replaces people, but that organizations fail to equip people to work effectively alongside it. Love that. Could not agree more. Directly aligns with what we're talking about. With 5 minutes, let me share my thoughts on what you can do about it. Sit down conversation with senior leaders. Talk about this if you haven't. What are your biggest priorities going into 2026? When HR and L&D comes and sits and talks to me as a CMO and says, "What are your biggest priorities for training? Where are the gaps with your people? What do you think the gaps are for the organization?" I absolutely love it. I've had it both ways. I've had HR and L&D only come with me when they want to push off some initiative I don't care about, and I've also had the opposite to the good. Inventory your priorities across the organization by functional area and department, and use this framework to set priorities for the org based on what you hear. That is a really good approach before you fill out the framework, and then take that to senior leadership and say, does this align to what you guys are worried about and what's keeping you up at night? Report back what you found to your boss, to the senior leadership team, to start a healthy dialogue around where L&D and HR fit. Should I be spending my time on this? Do you think I'm part of this initiative, or does John, the sales leader, have it? He's got it. Great. Where should I focus my time? That's how you can have this conversation. I often see, way too often, from learning and development in HR, reactive approach versus proactive in telling, right? They're coming to me. They're not telling me what they see. You guys should be the mouthpiece of the organization. Come to me and tell me what you're hearing and validate that with me, and let me be a part of that strategy. Um, what you think your priorities are, or even if the CEO told you something is a priority that you think is a priority for me or what I care about, it might not be my priority at all. I think often we think what the CEO cares about, everyone else cares about. Maybe not. Have an open and honest dialogue about that and ask open-ended questions to get to that. I see a lot of admiring the problem. Well, this is how the CEO wants it. I roll. Joe's CEO doesn't care about my priorities, so I'm not going to get it done. If you're deferential and you're defeatist about your priorities, why would I care about your priorities when HR and L&D and the people management of what you do is not even my job, and 1/10 of 2% of what I'm worried about, right? This talks about being strategic HR and having a seat at that table and the way that you approach it. This idea of show me a plan or a way of thinking or new data that makes me care about the problem, and or come to me with a solution for how we can fix an agreed upon problem. That is where you start to be very valuable, right? Versus coming and kind of admiring the problem. I hate admiring the problem. I hate it. So many meetings, projects, ideas languish because someone doesn't take the first step to build a plan, prototype it, or put a pen to paper. Don't be afraid, as we mentioned, strategically, creatively, to put pen to paper and float ideas off your executives. They absolutely love it, and that's the way that you get buy-in and are successful. So, to summarize, performance isn't improving just because speed is. We know that. Practice is required to build confidence and judgment. Build this in. I hated seeing that it's not leveraged. Manager-led coaching, like that should be core to how you actually get people to retain and build relationships. Human judgment becomes more critical as AI scales. Managers operationalize learning and clarity day to day. Leaders must design clarity, expectations, and AI boundaries. All right, I got 2 minutes left. Let's hear what was your biggest takeaway from today's sessions, and what questions do you have? I know we're gonna run out of time here. And Heidi, I'm just catching up on chat. Absolutely love that. Embracing Gen AI at work. That's awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Love, love, love. That is super cool to see. I really appreciate that feedback. Drop in your chat what you've learned, but also please, please connect with me on LinkedIn because, as I mentioned, I'm going to continue to share some of these insights. 4 S's of learning. Thank you, Meg. Actually came up with that one on my own. I think it's super interesting too. Thank you, thank you. You guys are great, 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 great. I will share all of this, as well as references, numbers cited. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. I thought that was really, really a great session and really great engagement from all of you. So you guys are awesome. And we'll get you the worksheet. I hope it's valuable to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Paul. Seems like people are really resonating with these trends that you shared. So awesome, awesome session. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right, everybody. Up next, we are taking a quick 15-minute break, and then we'll have Roberta and Lauren join us for their session brought to us by WeLearn. And it's about how your learning strategy compares to 100 plus organizations. This is going to be a great session. I know it. So I hope you'll stick around, and I'll see you there.